Welcome to Charts Today Europe. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Friday the 19th of October comes to you from London. And big falls in the US market last night. Nasdaq down some 2.23%, Dow down at 327 points. So really having a big impact on stocks globally, and we're just seeing that sell-off continuing. Looking at the dollar, we're seeing the dollar climbing higher, so that's a factor there, and the euro also now sinking lower on that stronger dollar, and Japanese yen falling away again against that stronger dollar. So dollar looking strong there on all three time frames. Sterling actually sitting at $1.30 against the dollar, and we've got downside targets here of some 2.8% to 1.6%. So looking at 126, 128, 120 is almost looking inevitable for sterling. We've got one target here on the medium-term chart to parity. This is almost like a Brexit scenario of no deal if we can see the dollar the sterling just collapsing. Against the euro, we're seeing sterling lower as well. Against the Swiss franc, we're seeing sterling lower there too, and against the Aussie dollar, 183. So we're seeing sterling weaker against a stronger dollar on job numbers there this week. The Aussie dollar has done well. Bitcoin down slightly. It puts us into bearish territory on the short-term chart, but the Bitcoin outlook has been bearish for some time. Ever since that 20,000 peak, we've not really seen any recovery in the price long term. The S&P was down 1.4%. We do have a downside target here now emerging, 13% lower. We'd need a new low below this low to activate that, so one to watch. The same with the Nasdaq, down 0.2%. We've got a new downside target on the long-term chart to be activated as well. Taking a look at the Dow also lower downside target here of 13%. We're seeing that across the board. There is quite strong support here on that point and figure chart, so we might just well see the Dow recovering. And the Russell 2000 down 1.8% was hard hit, and this looking much more clearly bearish on the medium term. So smaller cap US stocks being really mauled. The future this morning for the S&P is up 0.4%, and the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.75%. So it does suggest we're going to see the US bounce back, pairing some of those losses yesterday, bear closing, and but it is still two steps down, one step up. So we are seeing the general movement down. The FTSE future this morning, we're just half an hour before the opening. The FTSE future is up 0.3%, suggesting that we are going to open higher, and the DAX future is up 0.25%, so also suggesting that we will open higher as well. The cash markets, the FTSE mid caps, is looking very bearish indeed, having had a really terrible October. So we are seeing smaller cap stocks being hit, and if we look at the DAX, they're also bearish. The CAC Current down 0.5% yesterday. Tokyo overnight down 0.75%. China, fairly bad economic news out of China, or disappointing economic news out of China, but the Hang Seng up 1%, and the Chinese market up 2.15%. Probably a bit of bear closing going on there as we head into the weekend. And Sensex down 1%, so the Indian market falling away, the Australian market fairly flat. Just to look at some of the commodities, crude oil up 0.5%, WTI up 0.5%, and gold is up 12.28, so just ticking higher there, still holding on to the gains we've seen, looking pretty bullish. Silver also not quite as bullish as gold, not on that, above that short-term cloud, but silver still a factor there. And US 10-year yields fell back from the low 220s to 2.18%, but still looking pretty bullish with upside targets. Remembering really that it's been this rise in bond yields in the US that really is spooking markets to some extent. With all the trade tensions and everything else going on, the markets are having to deal with quite a lot. We see here German bonds actually recovering the last few days, so bond yields sinking lower in Europe, bonds rising as a result. Looking at world markets, we see here Asia was mostly in the red. Europe yesterday, of course, heavily in the red. DAX down over 1%, and of course those US markets driving things lower, but the futures suggesting that we are going to see an improvement there. Looking at some of the stocks in the Nasdaq, all this data coming in from Yahoo, by the way. So this is my long-term weekly 1% chart, my daily, and then my daily with on-balance volume and a relative to the Dow. So looking at Activision Blizzard was down 8%. So we saw some really big moves in the market yesterday. Apple were down 2.3%, and if we look at Amazon, down 3.3%, not really affecting the lagging line on this medium-term chart, but really starting to put some pressure on. Google still hanging below, down 2.6%, hanging below on the medium-term chart, and Facebook really struggling still. And this 150 level, Facebook pretty critical. Downside targets 105, 142, 108. So a meltdown in Facebook shares is a possibility from the chart. Just looking at some of the others that we normally look at, Tesla down 2.89%, 250 being the critical level there. Looking at Netflix down 5%, giving up much of the gains we saw the day before, and Microsoft back below the 110 level. Trend still very much intact, but also just selling off there, holding on to its relative performance. Taking a quick look at the FTSE 100, yesterday we saw Pearson's with a strong performer. They've actually had a very good week versus the market, and we're seeing that showing up in the relative. Looking at some of the less good performers on the FTSE 100, we had CRH, Antofagasta down 4%, so big moves here. Ashtead Group, Standard Life, Aberdeen also down 2.8%. Antofagasta there also weaker. Taking a look at the FTSE 250, we saw National Express with a strong performer, up 6% yesterday. So it wasn't all fallers. These were all the stocks rising in the 250. But when you go to the bearish side, some very big falls. Mediclinic down 9%, Capita down 6%. Its woes really continuing. And taking a look last of all at the stocks, the Euro Stock 600 index, again, all coming from Yahoo. We're seeing here Argent's was down 10%, up 10%. Carrefour had a very strong day on better supermarket numbers and looking more and more bullish in the medium term. So we're seeing some of the defences coming into play. And if we look at the other end, Mediclinic was there, of course. So we are seeing Capita was there, but a lot of performances were down 3, 4, and some even over 5% lower. So some very big changes happening in the stocks. That's it for today, Friday. Hopefully we'll get the US rising and have a good end to the week. Until Monday, have a great weekend. Happy charting. See you then.